Let us know some of the concepts and some of the jargons that you are supposed to know as an upcoming web developer. Fundamentally, you should know that the internet is a big network that connects billions of computers, not only computers, but other electronic devices like mobile phones, like circuit boards, like the Arduino boards, the Raspberry Pi boards, smartwatches. All these devices are connected onto a very large network called the internet. So, we can say that the internet is the biggest or the largest network of electronic devices here on Earth. Now, the web is just a subset of the internet. So, the internet is the bigger umbrella, that is the largest network. But then we have a subset called the web. So, the web is just the protocol or the network through which we access our websites and what we call the APIs. So that one is smaller. You get it? And all these networks have what we call protocols. Protocols are standing orders that computers follow in order to successfully place a request and also receive responses. So just as when you pick up your phone and you call somebody, the first thing you say is hello. In that same way, these networks also have protocols that they observe. So if you are bringing a request, you go with the request headers before the body, and then the server taking the request also takes the request, processes the request into a response, returns the response to the browser. But the response comes with what we call the header, and then it also comes with the body. All the elements we were inspecting, the ones that we inspected for Facebook and PHP Foundation, they were all response bodies. The server also generates a code called the status code. Okay, and all these things are protocols. You would actually get these concepts as we practice more and as we go ahead in this course. When we start working with servers, you'd be able to appreciate all that I'm saying very, very well. Another way that files and documents are transferred, or another network through which documents and files are transferred and even text, is by the email networks. So we have the POP3, IMAP, and SMTP, standing for Simple Mail Transfer Protocol, and that is the commonest. Google uses the Simple Mail Transfer Protocol, and if you are hosting your website on a cPanel, through a cPanel, you are likely to be using this Simple Mail Transfer Protocol. So all these networks have standing orders that they follow. So these orders make them different from others. Now we also have the File Transfer Protocol. So the File Transfer Protocol is basically for transferring files under secure methods. So if you are hosting your site and you don't want the file to go through the browser, you can use an FTP server and then transfer your file safely. We also have another network called the SSH, which stands for the Secure Shell. This network is used to transfer information and files through or when you think your network is not that secure. Before these files are transferred, they are broken down or they are encrypted by cryptography. So it means that nobody who gets access to your files while it's being transferred can even use it. the files are very likely not to mean anything to anybody who gets the file when it's being transferred. So cryptography is a whole concept. That one, when you dive deep into cybersecurity, you get it very, very well. But for the meantime, get to know that there are several networks that we can send data or information across, or we can communicate through. But each of them has its own protocols that if you think you want to use that network, you must become well abreast with such protocols. Now, as an upcoming web developer, one concept you can't run away from is the concept of IP and DNS. As you are aware, I'm very sure you are aware that computers are very, very good at processing numbers compared to words. Yes, this notion is very, very true. Every computer or every electronic device that is capable of connecting to the internet has been given an identity or a unique identity. Just take this as a unique ID that you have on your Ghana card, and that identifies you from every other Ghanaian. This is how computers are also identified. Every computer or every mobile phone or every device that can connect to the internet has a unique ID number that you can reach that device through. It's called the IP address, which stands for the Internet Protocol. An example of an IP address is 192.168.43.8. Since your server is also a special computer, it also has its own IP address. By intuition, if you are looking for a document or a file on your server, all that you need to do is to type the IP address of your server and then state where that file can be found. So ordinarily, this is what is supposed to happen. You can't keep all these names or all these numbers in mind. 192.168.43.8 for, let's say, Facebook, and then 192.143. something for, let's say, Instagram, and then for TikTok, and then for the others. This is going to be a very daunting task for man to do. The people who first developed the internet thought of this and realized that there should be a workaround about this big problem. The solution was DNS, which stands for the Domain Name Server System. The DNS is actually a database that has all the IP addresses and the domain names associated with the specific IP addresses. So when you make a request to, let's say, facebook.com, the request is first received by the domain name server. That is a database that is there. The DNS looks at the domain name you have written and then looks for the IP address associated with the domain name you have written. So the question is, which server is hosting the files you are looking for based on the domain name you have written? The request is then further forwarded to the IP address that was found through the domain name system's search. So if the IP address is, let's say, 192.168.43.9, the request is forwarded specifically to that server. I believe this is very thoughtful and going to reduce the stress of having to keep all these complex and ugly looking IP addresses in mind. You don't need to memorize all these IP addresses because there's a server that has all these information. So all that you do is you register your site with a domain name server. That is why when you are uploading your site or when you are deploying your site, you'll be asked to buy a domain. So when you buy the domain, it is registered in the domain name server so that whenever anybody enters the name of your domain could be phgfoundationafrica.org, your domain could be ama something.com. That depends on you, provided nobody has chosen that domain. Okay, so if that domain has not been registered already, you can register and then you get that associated IP address, because there are times that IP addresses are used, especially if the communication is between computers. So when you are setting up an API, maybe you don't want any human intermediary. That one you can use IP addresses because the computers still understand. So instead of giving the name of the site, you'd rather give the IP address and the computers can still work with it. Who or what then is a client? So in this field, a client is basically the one who is making the request to our web server. The client could be the computer, it could be the browser, it could be even the individual who is making the request. And these clients could be Chrome, could be Firefox, could be Safari, it could even be a mobile phone, it could even be a microcontroller like the Arduino Uno board, or even a Raspberry Pi and other microprocessors and microcomputers. Mind you, as somebody who works with the internet, you should take note of the fact that we don't only access the internet using our computers. Now that IoT, Internet of Things, is really increasing at an exponential rate, even smartwatches, smart fridges, smart mirrors, smart spectacles, and smart fridges and stuff can even make requests to the internet. The web is also navigated by individuals who are visually impaired using assistive technologies. So screen readers have become exponentially increased in surfing the internet. In your development journey, you have to factor them in your website as much as possible. So as we go on, I will teach you some of the techniques to use in order to help screen recorders easily navigate your website without any hassle. In some parts of the world, when you build a website that is not friendly to individuals who are visually impaired, it's actually against human rights. And as such, you can even be sanctioned, and some companies may not hire you for not knowing the techniques to use in order to make your website accessible to screen readers. And so this area is very sensitive, and as such, you must be very, very, very cautious about it. All that this slide seeks to achieve is that you should know that if you are working with the Chrome browser, the Firefox browser, there is actually a software within the browser that is rendering your page for you, that is drawing the buttons for you, that is writing the text for you, that is rendering all the things that you see on your website for you. Okay, these softwares are engines. So Chrome has its own engine, The Firefox also has its own engine. The other browsers also have their own engine. You see, and that is why sometimes the web servers would deliver the same information, but the browsers will render it not really in the same format because they are being rendered by different engines. They are actually supposed to display the same thing, but that doesn't tend to happen so often. So my upcoming professionals, you should be well abreast with which feature is supported by what browser and which browser does not support the feature you are trying to include in your page, so that you don't write a code that works on one browser but breaks on the other.